All right, welcome everyone to the first episode of Loosehead Pod. It's so wonderful to have you all taking a chance on this new show and diving into all things rugby Australia with myself. My name's Josh, I'm your host, and I'm so happy to be joined by some guests on this, the very first episode, people diving in, taking a chance with me and sort of understanding what I'm trying to do here with this show. So let's introduce them straight away, and we are just going to rip into all the news of the week with Rugby Australia and the Wallabies, and a lot of chatter and banter about where we think the team might be going or what should be done with the team in the future. And we've got, first and foremost, Andy. Andy, mate, how are you?
G'day, mate. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. And we've also got Sam. Thanks for being here.
Good, mate. Love it.
And Lewis, mate, you're a legend. Thanks so much for jumping in, guys.
G'day, Josh. Happy to be here.
Good to have you. Now, boys, look, I wanted to start off with an easy one and a pretty general one as we, unfurl the pub chat here for everyone. And we've just come off of the back of the Lions series, and, obviously it was disappointing to go down 2-1 in that one. There's a lot of conversations that could take place about that one that I don't necessarily want to rehash or go down the rabbit hole on. Phil Waugh's having his stoush with World Rugby at the moment over the great undisclosed apology or whatnot with the decision, if you will, the penalty from game 2 and everything that came about as a result of that. So we all know what happened. I don't want to relitigate it too much. But what I wanted to ask you guys, and we'll go around the table, is what positives did you draw from the series as a whole? We all know we wanted to win, we didn't, but what made you feel good about the future moving into the Rugby Championship for the Wallabies? So I might start with you, Lewis, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Look, the positive is just firstly that the Lions is one of the great examples of what differentiates rugby from rugby league in this country, which I think is our main battlefront. So them coming every 12 years is such a great opportunity for us to reinvigorate just awareness around the game. And we showed that a really seriously ragtag bunch got competitive by the second week. We were robbed. We should have won that. And of course, if we won the second, then we would have won the series, and that would have been great. That's a shoulda, woulda, coulda, We'll never know what that might have meant, but I just think it's a great way to reinvigorate a bit of interest. I saw amongst my own mates who really waned with their interest in rugby union and follow rugby league more closely in other sports. They perked up and paid more attention. And we did start to show a bit of, I think, a little bit more of the proper Wallabies style of play by the end of the series. We showed a bit of grit. We got in their face. We played British style rugby in the front row and the pack, but we did it the Wallabies way in the back line. And I'm taking it as a moral victory. I think we won the series, and that's bloody great. From where we were before we came into it, was so ill-prepared, really no idea who was going to be 10. We did really well. And there's a few superstars that we've uncovered. I think some people really stood up and said, I'm going to be a part of this team for 10 years, or at least 8. So that's wonderful for me.
Mate, I might push you a bit further because you've said a lot of things that have resonated with me, and then we'll spread it around to Andy and Sam on this one. Look, I have to agree on, as lame as it sounds, the moral victory aspect of it all, where, there's no such thing as a moral victory in sport, but I did feel moderately good coming out of this series, and I sort of sit back and think on the injuries that we had, a couple of key refereeing decisions going one way or another, and the point differential between the 3 games. I believe the Lions outscored us by 1 whole point across the 3 games. You guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I took a lot out of it as far out. If a couple of little things just go differently, we're really in that series, if not winning, as a really transitional team. And, the Northern Hemisphere fans would hear this and be like, shut up, losers, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, don't get me started on how they've been lately, but that's a story for another day. But back to you, Lewis. I just sort of also want to say about your comment with the revitalization of maybe interest in rugby moving forward. I had this conversation with my wife, who's arguably a bigger rugby fan than me, as we watched the series, and we looked at the huge crowds and everything, and I was sort of sitting there going, look, this is wonderful, but I do find it hard to gauge the interest given the size of the Lions touring party. You know, they bring over so many people who spend so much cash in Australia, which is great for us. But, you know, I was like, I wonder how many Aussie fans there are at all these games and how much of this will translate to future ongoing interest amongst, you know, kids and adults moving forward in the Wallabies. Do you think it has done enough to truly spark that interest going forward?
I'm not sure about that, honestly, mate. Once again, it's a bit like the Bledisloe game that went down to our goal kicker not kicking it in time and the referee blows the whistle and we don't win a Bledisloe. Just what that would have meant for us. I think that if we won the series, that we could definitely confidently say this is game-changing for the game. This is going to get kids turning up to rugby union trials instead of rugby league trials. But the positive I was trying to draw out of it is just the reminder of the international nature of rugby union versus rugby league, and that I hope that maybe some of the professionals, the guys that are already at the point where they're deciding where they're going to go, maybe they had a background of union and league, that they see what this means, that they see that this is a career for them that they could take internationally. They can earn dollars and pounds and yen overseas and euros, and maybe help the Wallabies along the way. But the victory is that's the crime here. And you, I mean, my mates reminded me that the Lions are the ones paying the bills. They come out here and they're the ones that have got the cash on the table. Yeah. That's why every refereeing decision goes their way. And okay, so be it. And when I say a moral victory, that's not even right. I'm just claiming that as a win. I think we won that series. And I think that rugby fans would have noticed that, and perhaps some casual fans would have noticed that as well, that we were competitive against an all-star side of Northern Hemisphere teams, and that's got to go well. But we've got to back it up. We've got to do better with some of the weird decisions that did happen. I think we've got to convert that right now. Whatever momentum we've got to make it happen right now in the Rugby Championship. Starts with the Springboks. You couldn't have better preparation than playing the Lions before the Bok. It's perfect.
Completely agree. Andy, let me throw it around to you. And sorry, guys, I am directing traffic a little bit. I'll let sort of anyone can jump in at any point, really, but I'll just direct traffic for now. Andy, let me throw it to you and just say, building off of what Lewis has said there, what positives did you draw from the Lion series?
For me, it's you can see the belief in the players in that second test match. And, you know, look, I may have been a couple of beers into the evening on Saturday night, but at halftime I said to my wife, I said, we're going to win this. And she said, it's 8-0. I said, no, they're not going to lose. They're just going to smash them in the second half. You could see the belief on their faces. And I want to echo what Lou said is consistency has been the Wallabies' biggest issue in the last 15, 20 years. We can pull out a big game. We can pull out that odd win against the All Blacks. We can belt South Africa when they sometimes come over here. We can win in England at Twickenham. That's great. It's the next game that's the biggest concern. You know, in the past, we'd go on and go smash people and then we'd lose to, you know, Wales or Scotland or something like that. So
or struggle against Fiji.
Yeah, exactly. And it's building off that, both as a team, as a supporter base. I think people want to see that consistency. Australians are horrific bandwagoners, particularly Australian rugby fans. There's a lot of us out there that just hide. So if the Wallabies start winning and playing well consistently, but it is winning, if they keep winning, they will build on this. I think this will be a catalyst. I'm really nervous about playing the Springboks, mainly because of my irrational hatred of everything South Africa. But I want to see us front up. And if we lose, you know, in the dying minutes to a penalty kick, but we've absolutely belted the snot out of them, I'll be happy. But if we capitulate and they rack 50 up on us in either one of those tests, we're back to square one. Oh,
yeah, I agree. It'll be devastating. And I'm completely with you guys there. And, you know, having a heart attack over what would happen next. And it would be heartbreaking to see just a night and day performance, a Jekyll and Hyde type performance over in South Africa. I really don't hope that doesn't happen because there was so much good to take from the Lions series. Sam, let me throw it to you and we'll get you to round this one out. Mate, anything that you took as another positive from the Lions series?
Yeah, look, I really agree with what the boys have said. I think, you know, for me, going into the series, particularly, and I rewatched that doco with Eddie Jones on Stan the other day, you know, at the end of the World Cup when we, you know, I was hoping for a win against Portugal. to be where we're at now, where everybody thought the Lions are just going to absolutely tear us apart, right? We're going to go down, 500-0 each game. To be at that point now where, where we lost the series by 1 point, 68-67, to be at the point where it comes down to a referee decision between us and winning the series. It's that hearts and minds thing, right? So young kids, particularly where we know a lot of the player base comes from, the sort of GPS schools, the first 15s, where you've got a lot of kids that go there, play star in their first 15, and then are offered league contracts. If we can pick up some of those ones for that next generation to go, as kind of Lou was saying earlier, hey, hang on a minute, I know that league might be flashing a bit of cash at the moment, and I might be, but there might actually be something a bit more long-term here. We're really going to turn the tide. But, I sometimes think of the Wallabies like, a relationship that used to be great, a woman that you fell in love with and then she keeps cheating on you and you kind of go, okay, this time it's going to be different. I really hope we build on it, as the boys have said. I really hope that we go to South Africa and we don't get flogged. One of the other positives I took out of it was that a lot of the chat online, a lot of the chat in places like Reddit and Facebook and that sort of stuff, it's gone from, oh, look, you guys are on the up and, we want a strong Wallaby team and, like a little bit kind of condescending to now be taken seriously, that we're, I'm copping abuse online. You know what I mean? Like it's gone from, oh, hey, good on your participation medal. Like, just keep on trying to, oh, you bunch of whingers, this, that and the other. I actually take that as a positive that we're being taken seriously again.
Also, I felt, let me ask you if you've seen this. I've felt a little bit of a circling of the wagons in terms of Wallabies fans. I really feel like people have rallied together for the team in a style that, like, in the past, look, maybe we're even guilty of being a little bit down in the doldrums on the team. And like you said, Sam, I mean, full disclosure, I don't think it's wild for me to say this. I'm sure many people were the same, like you mentioned. Like that 1 point differential over the series that I talked about, I didn't guess that coming into this. I thought we were going to get pumped as well. And that's not me being a Wallabies downer. It's trying to be somewhat of a realist going off of past performance and the fact that it's the Lions. It's literally the Northern Hemisphere All-Stars. So I was a bit like, oh, this might not go very well for us. And we far exceeded my own expectations, which was great. And other Wallabies fans have sort of seen this performance, and the rhetoric online has become far more positive and galvanized, I think, by what people have seen, which is great for Rugby Australia. But let me open this one up a little bit, boys. And like I said, anyone, please jump in anytime. Don't necessarily wait for me to call your name. But I wanted to look ahead to South Africa a little bit now that we've kind of warmed up and got the easy questions out of the way, and talk about how the team might take shape in this first test coming up in the Rugby Championship. If I can, actually, I lied. Anyone jump in, but I'm just going to get Lewis to start us off on this one, because I actually found a really good point from you on the aforementioned subreddit, Lewis. Sorry, I did a bit of a sneaky dive into your comment history. I hope you don't mind, mate. I'm that guy. But I found some really good takes in there. So I was, thinking I would bring it up on the show to run by you and have you extrapolate on. Mate, I was going to ask everyone what you think in terms of the team lineup moving forward. Do we need to go with what we've got, give Joe Schmidt some more time with this particular lineup that he's tried out, or do we need to shuffle things around a little bit? And, we've got the backs and the forwards there. I might start with the backs, because you said this, Lewis, in regards to, and I'm not having a go at anyone in particular, but just the whole back line. There's been a lot of conversation about, Joseph-Aukuso Sua'ali'i and his position there at 13, and kind of, does he need more time? What do we do with him? Is maybe another position better for him? But then if you move him, what the hell do you do with everyone else? And I just feel like we've got the talent, but we've not necessarily got the talent at the right spots. So I found this comment, not from you, from Western Carpet, and forgive me, boys, I'll just read a couple of verbatim quotes back to you. It's not going to take too long. Western Carpet said the following, and this has been a relatively common take to a certain degree: picking Sua'ali'i again at 13 is malpractice. There's no such thing as playing a longer game when you're in a crucial, important test series, and he's had 2 really, really poor defensive performances at a critical position. And we have a literal world-class 13 being shoved to 12 to facilitate it. This is crazy. And okay, Poetry said maybe Sua'ali'i would be better placed on the wing. And you came in with this, mate, and obviously I'm reading your words back to you, but I'm sure you'll be able to expand on this a little bit. In regards to Sua'ali'i, you said he's a fullback, always was a fullback. Tom Wright was a fly half and a League 5'8" before we brought him to the Brumbies and played him at 12, then wing, then fullback after injuries and Tom Banks' departure. My point being, Wright's not a natural fullback, and I think he's better at the wing or the 12. But I agree that Sua'ali'i should be a wing way before considering him at 13. That's the most difficult defensive position. Giteau is awesome at it. Sua'ali'i has no idea there, and we see the worst of both of them out of position. This is really weird play from Joe Schmidt. I personally found myself nodding along to that one, Lewis, and I'd love for you to be able to dive a bit deeper.
I love this guy. I love this guy on Reddit. Look, you know, I wrote some points just when we were waiting to come online about things that I wanted to talk about with you guys, and this is my main bugbear, and it's not even about that. I mean, I'd love to hear Joe Schmidt explain this to us, and let's hope this podcast goes bananas and we start to get the big dogs coming in to explain themselves. But the fact that the Waratahs were taken under central rugby control by Rugby Australia and played this guy at 15 all season, only for the Wallabies to throw him into 13, is perhaps the most frustrating thing of all, aside from us as rugby fans watching him struggle to make defensive reads in 13, despite his great one-on-one tackling. It's insane that the Waratahs played him in fullback and Wallabies played him in 13.
And just to add on to that, sorry if I can interject, Lewis, and it's not like he was bad at 15 for the Waratahs.
No, and look, I also, when you're shoehorning in a guy who's maybe a bit green at this level, and dude, like my nephew Joseph was my nephew's mentor at King's School, right? Lovely kid, made the first, I think, in year 9, possibly maybe it was year 10, but like Curtly Beale, was just a megastar, right? And what you do with a rugby league guy when you bring him in, we've seen many examples of how to do it, and no one, I don't think, would ever do 13 to begin with. When we had young 10s that no one knew who the right Wallabies fly half was, I thought the wisest thing to do would be to actually put him right next to the fly half in 12 and say, Joe, it's not too flashy. Yes, you're going to have to make some big hits to defend our tiny fly halves, but your offload game will be great and handy. Giteau and the 10 wrapping around might get some nice offloads off you. If not, you go wing. It's kind of like what they did with Sonny Bill. Like they put him on the wing first, I think, then they moved him to 12, knowing that he's going to take the contact well, get an offload away and back up, and he will not get run over in defence. Whereas 13 is such a weird defensive position where you can get sweeping plays that just leave you totally flapping your arms. And how many times did we see it? And it's more that Joe Schmidt saw that happen so many times and still stuck with it. And, of course, Giteau is a great 13. So I'd love to see him get a go at wing or fullback. I'd love to see Tom Wright maybe move back to wing. I'm loving that we've got wing depth. I mean, I think the tools been done by. I thought each did so well. Jorgensen was an absolute revelation. So we've got wing depth, and someone might be a bit unlucky there. I just want to see that Dan McKellar gets told by the Wallabies coach, Dan, Joseph's the most expensive thing that we've ever bought, and you will play him where we need him in the Wallabies, and this is the plan. Like, what is the point of this coordinated rugby approach if we're not doing it? The All Blacks tell players to move entire cities and change clubs to be where they want them for the All Blacks, and it works very well for them. We should be doing the same. I'm not sure. I'm not totally convinced that he will be a Wallabies fullback, but I just don't think he's a 13. I'd have him 12, 11, 14 or 15 and not 13.
I'm vigorously agreeing with you, mate. Sorry, go for it, guys.
Look, I'm loving all of it, but can I just put a name out there that will send kind of chills down your spine?
Sure.
League converts, Tamana Tahu. Let's not forget he moved into 12, and I think the Wallabies copped in South Africa. They got beaten 473,000 to 0 or something, and he never really.
He was a turnstile.
It absolutely destroyed his confidence. You could see it because he went there.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. And that's where that collective wisdom of starting on the flank, on the edges is that, you're going to get a little bit less caught out if you're over there on the edge, and you can, of course, chime in, like so many great wingers have, into flowing backline moves anytime you want, but you're out there copying a little bit less of the complexity of your defensive role. And, of course, we do want him to be confident, and I wonder if his confidence has been damaged.
I'm going to give him his credit, right? He sucked really hard in that second test. He let in probably 3 line breaks that led to points. He would have been seething in the weeks between test 2 and 3. He would have been absolutely sitting because he's a consummate professional. Everything that I read about this guy is that he's the head and shoulders the most professional rugby player in Australia. He would have sat down and looked at the tapes, and he did have a good third test. He and Giteau, I think, have potential to flourish. Lenny is brilliant. I think without Lenny, we lose every test match. I think he's the number one linchpin in that whole back line. We run a lot of our plays off 9, not 10, and he's the guy that gives us the go forward. He's a decision maker. I think he can make it work, and I understand, having Joey at fullback or on the wing. I would love to see that, but he's a big boy and he can break tackles. And if he gets this defensive system, he will destroy someone.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, from everything I've seen, I know, obviously, I read out a Reddit comment from someone who's not here, having a bit of a go at him, but you guys have mentioned as well, it's not like his game is without deficiencies. He's a growing player, he's a learning player, and that's all fantastic. But I'm with you that, like, I'm fully on board with the belief that there is a bright future in the Wallabies for Joseph-Aukuso Sua'ali'i, and whether or not it's starting on the wing, starting at fullback, or on the bench, whatever it is, I do believe he has to have a spot somewhere. I just think that we've seen enough positivity and enough flashes of brilliance from him that we need to invest in this guy now. I've been a really big fan of his play at fullback, but there's a whole conundrum with what do you do with if you do eventually bleed him on the wing and put him at fullback. What do you do with Tom Wright then? And sort of the game continues to become muddier and muddier with shifting people around. I've got a question later on for you guys about, we can touch it on it then, whether Tom Wright is even at all droppable given his kicking game. I don't know at this stage, but Sua'ali'i, I've been talking with my wife about it, going like, I love his game offensively. And this is a weird analogy to run by you guys. I'm not sure if any of you are basketball fans, but just real quick, he just reminds me a little bit too much of Derrick Rose, a former NBA MVP, in that he knows no other speed outside of balls to the wall, and it does get him hurt. And I love his ticker, but sometimes he just needs to pull back slightly and not throw his head into knees and things like that, because I want to keep him on the field. He just goes so hard, which I guess is a good thing. But yeah, I think there's absolutely a spot for this guy. He's just got to, like you say, Joe Schmidt's got to look after him, keep his mental toughness at the forefront of the team's mind, and not absolutely ruin him by putting him in a position he's not meant to be playing at and losing all that confidence. Get him somewhere else and get something happening. Completely agree with you that Giteau is the answer at 13, and that's the way it's got to go. But in saying that, while we still focus on the back line, I'll just open this one up. Anyone jump in. Guys, whilst, we do seem to have the answer at 13, I think, with Giteau, even though he's not playing there now, is it fair to say that Australia just has a massive problem at number 12 in general?
I think so. The other question I would have is, if we think about Joseph on the wing, who do you bench?
Yeah, I mean, because
who do you say isn't going to get a gig? Because I think Dylan Peach was hard done by in that. I think he's phenomenal. I've always been a massive fan of Dylan Peach. He's hard as nails.
He can have that number 11 jersey for the next 2 years, as far as I'm concerned.
He's amazing. And then you've got Jordan on the other wing.
Yeah. I think Potter is the one that shouldn't have had Peach's jersey. I also think Corey Toole ahead of Harry Potter as well.
I agree.
I think Jorgensen was unbelievable. An absolute revelation in skill and execution, but also ticker. That guy played a great series. Yeah. And what riches we have. So look, maybe it's about. Again, I'm not even criticising Sua'ali'i at all. His defensive mistakes were because he's not a 13 and he hasn't played there at all. Yeah. Yeah, and so my criticism is, once again, and it almost always is, of the friggin' Rugby Australia administration, everything about them. Once again, they've taken the Waratahs under control. They have the choice to put him wherever they want because they're the bosses of the Waratahs. So if he had a season playing Super Rugby at 13, then he would have been much better and let in less tries and we would have won the series. It's just so friggin' retarded, once again, of the Wallabies setup and the way that this game is administered and the Waratahs, that this guy was not played where they were going to play him. And I think they were going to play him there the whole time because he played there against England and had a screamer. But I'll just remind you guys that game where we beat England, and what a game, and what a debut by Sua'ali'i. Incredible. Our tactics were doing chip kicks over the top to use his athleticism and height. We never did it once.
Yes.
We never used even the things that worked against England, against the Lions. We never did it once, and we basically just highlighted what doesn't work amongst both him and Giteau without doing the things that do. I never saw crossfield kicks to him. That's not his fault. That's the coach's fault.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I completely agree. Just on the point there that you raised, just to go on the wing thing, like what do you do with the wing before we get sort of to the 12? I completely am with you guys. Like I was not a Dylan Peach stan until, obviously that game against the Lions. I believe it was the Force game against the Lions where everyone just went, whoa, and he had the game of a lifetime and it basically forced Joe Schmidt to pick him. I've sort of, my eyes have been opened. I've wakened up to the brilliance that is Dylan Peach since then. I do think he played really well in game 3. I'm personally more flexible on the argument between Sua'ali'i and Peach on the wing, with one of them on the bench and the other starting on the wing. I'm relatively open to be swayed by either argument there. But Peach is fantastic. I'll just say, like, the one thing I do agree with, and again, not to put the boot in, but I've been working on, I just was saying to the guys, Lewis, I've been putting about 12 hours worth of editing and game tape review into this video I'm doing on Max Jorgensen, which is, I'll release with this when it's ready, which will be done in the next 24 hours. But while I was tearing down the tape, unfortunately, look, while as good as Jorgensen looked, and my God, Australians don't realise how good they've got it with Max Jorgensen right now, on the other side of the coin, the tape, I don't believe, it wasn't particularly kind to Harry Potter. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I love all of our wingers. I think Toole is phenomenal as well. When Potter was doing his thing for the Force, I'm like, how are we not picking this guy? Oh my God, he's so good. He played so well in Super Rugby. But just when he played against the Lions, he seemed a bit more timid, few defensive breakdowns that hurt us in the end. And I just think that he's got stuff to go back and work on to really try and convince Joe Schmidt that he's worth another shot. But I'm with you guys that for now, I don't necessarily believe Potter is the answer due to the great riches we have at wing. And Potter's a part of that equation. He's a phenomenal player, but I think we might have better options. And even considering Sua'ali'i in his spot is something I would do.
Yeah, I just think, once again, you've got the flow-on effect of, you've got Sua'ali'i is our big superstar, and so I understand why we want him playing rugby. We need him playing for the Wallabies no matter what. So he's the...
Oops, sorry, we lost you there, mate.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you now. Keep going. I
was just saying, like, it's a bit of a double shoehorn between Potter and Sua'ali'i, where I understand why Sua'ali'i is getting forced into the side because he's our marquee player in Australian rugby. We paid so much for him, and we want him playing rugby as much as possible. I don't understand why he was pushed to 13 when he played fullback for the Tars and is a fullback since schoolboy rugby. I think he would go fine on the wing, and maybe it would be that one winger is an out-and-out pacer and the other one is a hybrid fullback come wing between him and Tom Wright, which works well for other teams, and it could work. But Potter's the one that I'm taking out of the whole 23, and my number 23 on the bench is someone who brings an X factor and point of difference. Okay. And it's funny because Tom Wright, I think his best season ever for Australia was on the wing. And, you know, he's done pretty well at fullback, but he's got a couple of deficiencies as well. I'd imagine Schmidt was worried about such a good kicking fly half playing against Sua'ali'i being a bit of a novice at that level, that he was worried that Finn Russell would just run him this way and that and take him out of the game. And he may well have, and that may be wise. But 13 is also not wise. So I would have gone wing, let Wright keep the fullback for now, but maybe with a view to Sua'ali'i and Wright run these roles of one's a hybrid winger / fullback, and they play together. When balls kick deep, Tom Wright runs off his hip, knowing that he'll get a great offload away, and we run it more than we kick it. the Wallabies way and we get back amongst the forwards and get back into it. It's great to have the depth. I think Dylan Peach and Corey Toole need to occupy that out-and-out absolute jackrabbit role on the other edge.
Yep.
Those are so valuable. Look at what the Springboks are doing with Aronza and the other fella's name. They're two wingers that are like 80 kilos ringing wet, but they're just so amazing. We need to see that works at least on one edge. And maybe the other is a bit of a fullback come wing in the, we've got a few of those now. Even Jorgensen, I believe, has played a bit of fullback, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
He played it for New South Wales at the.
Have those guys. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I've got a question here. So you put Joey out on the wing. You put Joey at fullback. You put Righty on the wing. Who do you bring in at 12?
That's the $1 million question.
Oh, sorry.
What do we do at 12?
That's where I was going to finish. In the overall thing, when we're pushing people around this team and we're saying that Joseph is the one being shoehorned, but we just look at the cattle we've got, I just cannot believe when all of that was said and done, that the glaring obvious spot for Joseph then is 12. He's next to a young, inexperienced fly half, whoever it might have been at the time, Lalesio, Liner, it doesn't matter. He's big. He knows how to tackle on the straight-on stuff. And so that's where I would have put him for this series and only this series, with a view to saying, no, we're going to get you in fullback when you've had a bit more time there, but not this series. So I would have put Joe in 12, Ikitau 13, and our back three, I just would have swapped Peach for Potter. That would have been what I would have done, and I think that Joseph could have handled it. I totally agree with what you're saying, that they get so much more traffic that he might get trampled. He's a hard bastard, and he's tough.
Yeah. Andy and Sam, let me throw it to you, and just, to continue down that trajectory. It really is like the biggest story I'm getting at here is this 12 problem that Australia seems to have. Yeah. And we've just got, the contrast between, like we said, the great depth at wing versus how little depth we've got in the center of the field. What do we do with this?
Look, I don't want to put my sorry, Gummy, you go first.
No, you go, mate. I'm happy to wait. You go.
I put my Reds hat on, and there's a couple of guys in the wings of the Reds, and one of them is Isaac Henry, who's had come back from two really bad injuries, who's got a haircut you could set your watch to. He's like a clone of Timmy Horan, but he's bigger. But Dre Pakiho is one for the future. He starred in the under-20 team, just setting up tries for fun at 12. His first game for the Reds was against the Wales B team and smacked them around all left, right and centre. I think we need to work out what we're doing in our back line. So traditionally we've got a playmaker at 10, we've got somewhat of a playmaker at 12 and a defensive botcher at 13. It's different from sort of how other teams play. We've always traditionally had those playmakers in the centres, and I think we need to work out what we're going to do there. Do we bring in a big body like Samu Karevi style at 12? And look, I'm a big Samu man, but he's an old man and he's been playing in Japanese league. I think that's one of the biggest issues. That and probably our 10-12 connection is probably the biggest issue in Australian rugby right now, because we've got guys that can do the job, but aren't game breakers and world beaters.
I agree.
I'll throw it to you, Sam, and I'll just add to that. Like, I agree. But like, I personally, and I know this was a relatively popular opinion, I think I saw enough from Liner in the Lions series to not necessarily feel like amazing about the future of the Australian 10 jersey, but good enough where I'm like, yes, let's invest in this guy, let him grow over the next 2 years, and then let him rock and roll at the World Cup. Because I've just seen enough where it's like, I'm comfortable with him with the jersey moving forward, but that's just me. Sam, sorry, I'll throw it back to you, mate, about this 12 question
mate,
as well.
I think, I think Liner was incredible. I mean, right. young guy thrown in a Lions series in front of, 80, 90, 100,000 people, against arguably one of the best 10s in the world. And certainly, and I mean, he's a bit kind of scratchy and still a bit rusty, but I tell you what, his toughness, you cannot question it.
He was playing without a head after he got decapitated.
He got poleaxed a few times and he just got up and kept going. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, that because it sort of sends a message to the opposition as well of, we think we've got this guy's number. We think we can intimidate him off the field. and going into South Africa, who love to intimidate, that's, if they're kind of thinking twice, thinking, well, there's no point in pounding this guy into the turf because he's not going to give up. It just kind of puts they're in two minds.
It's actually a general. Sorry, if I can just say one thing. There's a general attitude I've noticed in going over the Lions series that I've loved. Like, obviously there are forwards there that are like this too, but particularly with the backs, where I look at guys like Liner, like Jorgensen, like Peach, who just like they don't stop. They get hit. They don't care. They get back up. They dust themselves off, and they've just got this really strong like belief and attitude in like, I don't care if I'm hurt, I'm going to keep going, and I love to see it.
Yeah, and look, I'm not adverse to Joseph going into number 12. I mean, look, he's obviously got a touch of the Sonny Bill about him, and Sonny Bill was a pretty handy number 12. Let's be honest. But I think if the time to test him in it was probably in one of the earlier tests. The only concern I've got is if, and I'm not suggesting that's what we're saying, but if he goes in there at 12 in South Africa, against the South Africans, it might really kind of, they'll look to exploit it. They'll look to run some of those big guys at him, and I don't doubt that he'll put him down, but he's probably maybe he's not ready yet for that level of kind of punishment. But I don't know how else we've got. I mean, the question is, do we have any other number 12s? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I really can't think of anyone that comes to mind.
I think Andy said, like, Pakiho is definitely a 12 for the future, and I think I'm a Brumbies fan, and I think David Sua'ali'i is also a 12 for the future. So I guess we were stuck with not having a ready-made 12, like Revi being a bit old, Paisami, I don't think he was actually fit. And he is small, but he's hard as nails. But so it was going to be a makeshift 12 solution. I just don't see the wisdom in shuffling another, like making a makeshift 12 out of your 13 so that both of them are in position. And so I just think that Joseph is hard enough to handle the hard running, like inside back, like loose forwards and the 12s coming straight at him and that massive Hugh Jones guy. I think he would have been all right. And I think the bigger weakness that we would have been worried about our opposition exploiting in both the Lions and the Bokke is the small fly half that we carry, who's also inexperienced. Whether it was Lalesio or Liner, they're both not big men. So both of these teams, the Lions in particular, who don't have enough time to gel as a proper full-on side, they just get to know some more basic plays and they do more simplistic things. We're going to run hard lines back at our 10 and 12 together. Now, Lenny copped so much in defending our 10. He got smashed so hard that he was rooted by the end of every game. He
was so good on defence. His moving up in the line, him and Jorgensen moving up in the line was out of control. Yeah,
he hit so much harder than his frame suggests. I really think we do have good 12s that are 1 or 2 years away from being ready for that. So if we're worried about destroying someone's future, I just think out of all the people we're worried about, I think Sua'ali'i can handle it. I think he is a consummate professional, as you guys said. I think he is hard as nails, fit, strong. He might sometimes go a bit too hard, as you said, Josh, and not have enough self-preservation. It's just that I would have said, mate, you just got to do a job for us here. Apologies, it ain't going to be fun, but it means Len will be outside you. The fly half can take a bit of heat off by just giving it to you to truck it up when he's got no other hope. That's the classic Wallabies malaise of the last 2 years, right? Is when we get tired, we just get to this one-out play, and you're just worried that Liner's going to get his head ripped off his shoulders by some beast. And if he can give it to Joseph, well, Joseph will wear that storm better and probably sneak away a cheeky offload every now and then. And everyone else is in their positions and they're backing him up as best they can. You got, I think that if Schmidt did the same thing with one of these younger 12s, we'd be even more upset. But yeah, I think Joseph was the answer for this series.
Let me ask, you are selling me. The only thing I'll say, I mean, like you said...
I'm starting to come on board.
Yeah.
I'm starting to come on board with this.
It's just for this period in time, right? We all don't want Joseph really to be a 12, I think, and yet I wouldn't mind it if he became a bloody Sonny Bill Williams type offloading 12 that could defend our fly half that is our fly half options are all very small men, and that's just how it's going to be. I love Liner. I thought he's done the job. That's our 10 going forward.
Yeah.
Great. I hope Lalesio comes back a better player, but I have not been a fan of his at all. And I think Liner took that so well, that pressure, and played so beautifully that's the guy to stick with.
Yeah, I agree. I think Liner has looked better than Lalesio and Donaldson in the 10 in the recent, sort of few games. So I'm with you there. The one thing I'll say, sorry, someone was going to jump in. What were you going to say? Sorry, mate. Was that you, Andy or Sam? You're going to say something there?
No.
Okay, all good. All I was going to say is just to get you to finish up on, we'll get onto the forwards in a second, guys, but just one quick thing, two quick things, sorry for you, Lewis, from what you said. You mentioned that the 13 is arguably the hardest defensive position, and that's why, we get a little bit worried about Sua'ali'i bleeding into the team there. Look, I mean, I've played rugby. I half know the answer to this, but I'm not a back. I'll just say, whilst arguably the 12 position is easier defensively, would you necessarily categorize it as easy, that it's not a concern if Sua'ali'i is learning there?
Not easy at all. In particular, again, when it's your fly half, for example, when the ruck's in the middle of the field and you're not sure whether to split your centres, it's the 10 that usually makes the call. And so a young 10, I think, is going to be a bit less likely to make the call, get over there, Joe, I need you on the other side of the ruck, or come with me and send Giteau to the other side. No, it's not easy, but it's also nowhere near as hard as 13. The 13's the guy that, and if you watch Giteau as closely as I do, week in, week out, his reading of when to do the dash, to bolt over and support the other side winger is just impeccable, and his timing, and he is so clever in that role, and in all the ways that your video package would highlight where Sua'ali'i got caught out is the ways that Lenny never gets caught out, almost ever, about when to go through to the secondary line of attack or to go up and hit the first line because he knows the fly half's going to hit him. The 12, you just got a little bit less of that decision making, and you're talking split second decision making. So I really think that he's been thrown further into the deep end of what was always going to be a deep pool. It was not going to be fun for him, and you'd almost apologetically say, mate, can you just be Sonny Bill Williams for us for 3 games? It ain't fun. Even against Fiji, it wouldn't be fun. It was going to be a bastard of a thing, but just have a crack at it, cop some traffic, try to help our fly half not lose his spine, and we'll see you next year after we play you for a season where you're actually going to play for us.
Yeah. Now, mate, look, I know you've got to take off soon. That might have been your alarm going off saying, time to go do your thing.
It was a reminder, but don't worry, I'll go to 1, mate. Give us another 10.
Oh, you're a legend. Well, look, I was going to throw it to the other boys, but if it's okay, I'll just bleed Lewis for everything I can while we've got him before he's got to take off.
100%.
Mate, I'm going to shift on to the forwards. And the one thing I was going to say about this is, same question, different answer. Is or should Joe Schmidt stick with business as usual over the last few games with the forward pack, even though he did mix things up a little bit during the Lions series, injury related and non-injury related? Or should we use this now rugby championship to try and change it up a little bit? The one thing that was really evident in the forward pack is this difference between, what I would term the mongrel selections versus the traditional selections where, and this isn't necessarily unique to the forwards. Dylan Peach comes to mind as well. There's 3 or 4 players out there that I really want in the team or on the field at all times because they've just got that mongrel in them. They're fucking awesome. They've just got a really dogged attitude in terms of playing bully ball. They go hard, they don't stop, and they just run over people, and they're trucking it up, and they want to just beat people to submission. And it's a really physical game. And obviously we've got guys like, Lukan Salakai-Loto, who, must be devastated that he's missed out on getting picked at this point, but he's just was putting his best foot forward in the 30,000 games that he played against the Lions, was really putting his hand up for selection.
Exactly, yeah.
Sadly didn't get one, but he plays that style that I love. And I was begging for him to get a start somewhere. Sorry, not necessarily a start, but a jersey somewhere for that 3rd game. But then,
absolutely,
with these bruises of the Peach, the Salakai-Loto build, and we're moving on to the forward pack. Yeah, Tom Hooper, like, what would you like to see Schmidt do with regards to the forwards? Because the problem is, when you go with the mongrel selections, you do obviously lose things in the line out. You know, not all of them are jumpers, and it can be problematic. And, you know, the line out just fucks everything up when it comes to selections, because you're like, oh, fuck, can he jump? Oh, okay, back to the drawing board.
But our line out in match one was shit anyway. It was so shit in the first test. And I think Schmidt once again made it fatal error, and I mean no disrespect to Champion de Crespigny, is that how I pronounce it?
Champion they say de Crespigny, but yeah.
De Crespigny, okay, leave the S out. So firstly, let me say I too was a major admirer of the Forces play all super season. I watched a fair bit of it. I loved watching them play, and I thought he played really well. I think he deserved to be in the squad, but I don't, once again, I just think that's a little bit of throwing a guy in the deep end to say, opening test against the Lions, you're on debut. He didn't even go that badly, but I think we knew a little bit more about Tom Hooper in game one. And what we did know about Tom Hooper was that he is a bastard. He is a shit stirrer and would have been more abrasive, and I think we were missing it with neither Sua'ali'i or Skelton in game one, that we would have just at least, I don't think we would have ever going to win the first game, but I think we might have left a little bit more of a dent in them and had them second guessing a bit if Tom Hooper played that starting 6 role then.
Well, let me run this by you if I can. Sorry, if I can just interrupt for a second and say, you know, my dream second row is Skelton and fucking Lukan Salakaia-Loto, because I just think they're such bruisers. But like, if I were to put that forward as a suggestion, does that ruin us in the line out, or do we care?
Also, just at the end of the game, I think a lot of people need to understand the role that Frost plays. As a tight 5 player, one of them's got to do this 80-minute job. And he's the guy. He empties the tank like I've never seen a man of his frame.
He's a great player.
I will never drop him. I cannot, because you need a couple of Skelton and Salakaia-Loto dudes. So Skelton showed he's good for 50 minutes. We were actually lucky with the lightning break that we got the extra 10 minutes out of him and Taniela Tupou to keep being bastards as they were and really upsetting them in the tight stuff. The lightning break could put some more oxygen back into them. Otherwise, they would have been gassed. I totally agree that Salakaia-Loto had done everything to at least be on the bench. It's that first game where I'm saying, no, Tom Hooper's the guy that starts for me, and maybe a bit more mobility
in the second row, are you saying?
I would have started Hooper in 6 in the first game. Salakaia-Loto unfortunately hadn't quite done what he had done by the time we saw how well he was playing. He put his case forward for the later games. Yeah,
but I'm talking about now. So, would you, when you say you get your 50 minutes out of Skelton, then he subs off. Who have you got coming on for that 30? And sort of like, I mean, who have you got starting in the second row? I mean, let's say you keep Hooper at the 6, which I agree with you. Hooper is fan. Well, sorry, you said you got Frost. You're a Frost man.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
I'm
great.
Frost and Skelton starting second row.
Yes.
And I would tell Tom Hooper and Lukan Salakaia-Loto to go nuts in training and prove to me who gets to be my reserve 6/lock.
Okay.
I also just really do not understand why we didn't let Tizzano come on earlier in the second and third games. Do you guys agree with that? I thought he deserved a few more.
Yeah, I'll let me say this, and then Andy and Sam, I'll throw it to you. Tizzano, like, look, I actually... It's not fair to say I wasn't a Tizzano fan, but I was very neutral on Carlo Tizzano through the Super Rugby season, and a lot of it was partially the media's fault in how much they hammered home that he was, you know, the try scoring leader and all that stuff. And I'm like, it's such a weird stat to throw out there as a testament to someone's ability, because he just, to me, happens to be the forward at the back of the pile that falls over the line once everyone pushes it over. And he did it a bunch of times, and that's great. And I was kind of like, look, Carlo Tizzano is a good player, but like, I don't care how many tries he scores. Show me more than that to prove to me he should be in a Wallaby jersey. And even though I was a bit mid on him, he really won me over in the Lions series. And I was like, fuck, this guy is a defensive guru. I really like him. When we're on the line, he comes through big time. For our asses are on the try line, we're really in a pressure cooker situation. That's when he's at his best. And he's really, like, I've swung around on him. So yeah, I'm all about it. Sorry, Andy, Sam, I'll throw it to you guys.
Oh, look, I really liked it. I love a number 7. I love a bit old school breakaway, you know. I love a number 7 like Tizzano, and kind of shades of Pocock and others where, they've got that real pilfering role, but they're hard as nails. They take a hit, they get in there, they don't hesitate, they work hard. I mean, I've always been a massive fan of that type. And just, on the second row stocks, I do agree with Lou. In fact, you're very convincing. I want to buy the pamphlet because I could not drop Nick Frost, and I think he's a workhorse. He does amazing stuff, and he turns up when we need him. But I love a second row in the mould of that hard as nails kind of just shit stirring big huge human. That skeleton who just, particularly going in against the box where you've got, like Etzebeth and others who love to shit stir a bit. He is an enormous human. I mean, I'm relatively tall. I stood next to Skelton, and he's just, everything about him is huge.
And he's an S-tier shit stirrer, and not of the Nick White mold, where Skelton, I think, is a bit smarter with his shit stirring because he's a bit more tongue-in-cheek about it. And, you can see the wink in his eyes, do you want to make something of it? As opposed to the jackrabbit Nick White style of just overreact to everything and start a massive melee.
Yeah, and you can. When you're that size, you can. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can be like, look, if you really want to throw fists, we can. But, have you seen the size of, he's not like Nick White, where Nick White has to be like, well, hang on a minute, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
But I'm going to put my hand up.
The other question I've got, sorry, just one more quick point. I was going to ask the boys 2 other questions. One is, we've got Pete Samu still, I think, kind of in the mix. What do you think might be his kind of role moving forward? And also, they seem to, if my reading is correct, they've ditched the Giteau Law.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up after this. Yeah,
for 12 or anywhere where we, that we can call upon and look at and go, okay, well, there's a player that we let slip through our fingers at one point, but we'd love to get them back in the fold.
Well, he was playing for the bloody Lions. That's our 12.
Yeah.
That's a missing link, isn't it? He was wearing a red shirt, our missing 12.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go. We've solved it. No, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point. I don't. Andy, what do you reckon?
Look, I'm going to put my hand up. I'm the guy that didn't rate Skelton.
Okay.
And I got downvoted on Reddit just into oblivion.
You got hammered for it?
People I'm like, sure, he's doing well in that shitty league that you guys play up there, and he's wrecking malls, but he's never shown it for Australia. And in my defence, he probably hadn't. I'm eating my words with a big fat spoon right now because those were the 2 best games I've seen him play. And that last game, what you're saying is exactly right. He's that funny shit stirrer. He's the guy you would hate to play against him because you'd be at the bottom of the ruck and he'd be like flicking your ear and saying something right in your face. And he's the guy you just don't want to play. And he destroys mauls for fun. He's just a gigantic body. Look, I think locking him down, and this with the Giteau Law being thrown in the bin, we're going to do everything we can to get him to play every Wallaby test until he retires.
I agree.
Yeah, I rate him. I was in the same boat as you, Andy, to be fair. Don't feel bad. I wasn't as bold as to throw this opinion out on Reddit, but it wasn't that I was anti-Skelton. Again, I was just more in the neutral camp, whereas because, and this is, part of the whole discussion around the Giteau Law and overseas players, I just wasn't, I did the Shaquille O'Neal. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with the game. I didn't watch as many Wallabies games last year. And coming into this Lions series, I was a bit like, oh, fuck, remind me how Will Skelton goes. I can't quite remember. And he won me over massively. He was unreal.
Yeah,
I always rated him. And look, I wouldn't have the guts as well to put on Reddit. So, fair play to you. Because, I'm sure your Reddit credit's probably gone through the toilet. But I always thought he was a bit, and I must admit, I always thought he was a bit of a one-trick pony. I watched him when he came up through the ranks, and I thought he's just a huge human who relies on being a huge human, and just sort of, you get maybe 10 minutes of really good stuff out of him, but most of the time he was, and, maybe this is too harsh, but he felt a bit lazy. Like he was just this massive guy who just rumbled around and smashed into people.
Didn't get
But
that
I saw a
impression
different
during the
side of them
Lions series, did we,
in the
though?
comp, that's
I
for
think
sure.
he suffered
I saw
a
a
bit
very
in
different side.
previous Wallabies performances. I'm totally with you guys. He was not good enough for us previously, but he had suffered a bit where he also was being brought back at the weird time for their season, for the Northern Hemisphere season, at either carrying an injury or not at his full fitness, which, of course, with a man that size, he needs to be at his fittest. And even then, it's a pretty big gamble you're taking on a guy, because if he works his ass off in the first half, you just get him to half time, he puts some oxygen back in the blood, and you get another 5 minutes maybe out of him, maybe 10. And so, yeah, like, we had not seen his best because he had not been at his fittest. And even now, I don't think he was quite there. Unfortunately, we're not going to get him. The Giteau law changing does not change it. His contract, these test matches are outside of the international window. We've got to have a global rugby schedule that allows us to play these test matches when these guys' bread and butter, how they make their living, does not, they don't clash with each other, or we won't see him. I don't think he's going to South Africa. I don't think we can make it happen. So it sucks. I think Lucan is our next best. I think Lucan should be the Skelton sub off the bench to do that exact role, just 10% less. And I think Lucan was really hardly done by. I think McWright should have come off, or maybe even swapped around and been off the bench for Tisano. I thought that McWright got more and more. I thought he went missing more and more through the series, and I'm a big fan of his. It was unusual, and he might have been carrying something, I don't know, but I found him a bit missing in the third match, and I thought that Tisano showed so much that he should have played a few more minutes. But I certainly see, with a guy like Skelton, I see the value in these boys going up to the Northern Hemisphere. We're being left behind. You can see it through the Springboks are the greatest example of what it does for you when you've got your players playing in those top Euro leagues, what it does for your national side. And it's why I said that I think that we could not be better placed for this test match with the Boks than just having played the Lions right now. I think we're ready to go for that match. We need to take that energy straight into it, and they won't like what they saw. They'll be thinking, shit, we've got a bigger game on than we thought.
Oh, I definitely got to hit him in the mouth. If I can drag you guys really, really quick while we're here down the tangent that is the Giteau law. Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm riding the fence on this one, and I want you guys to win me over, convince me to your side of the argument, whether you're for or against it. It's hit the news this week. Phil Ward and Rugby Australia's come out and said, that's it, the Giteau law is gone. It's fair game for all worldwide for Wallaby selection. Let's rock and roll and do this. Whereas a bit of a weird policy in the past. But guys, are you for or against the scrapping of the Giteau law, and tell me why?
Look, I don't think we have a choice. To be honest, we can't compete in Australia. We can't compete with the NRL, and we can't compete with Northern Hemisphere rugby until we sort out our bloody pathways. And, I've got a 17-year-old boy, plays in first 15, wants to play rugby after, and he goes, what if I get good? Well, and he knows he's never going to make a Reds team. He knows he's never going to make a rugby. He goes, he's got mates that finished a couple of years ago who were going over to Japan playing Div 2 rugby and earning a living. It's crazy that there's a market for rugby players in Japan, yet in Australia we can barely pay first grade premier rugby players. We can't compete, and I think we just need to embrace it and see what happens. Let's just see what happens. I think the big loser in this might be New Zealand.
Yes,
exactly. Josh, I might leave it with this.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
This question, mate, but I'm 100% for it. We can look across the ditch to New Zealand for the example of why it's strengthened New Zealand rugby to not let them go off and play everywhere else in the world. But they're totally different to us because they don't have a far outnumbered rugby league over there where players have this option. So we're totally different. We're a small market. We don't have the economy to pay these guys enough money. So we need to let them go and look to the sort of football model where you can look to sort of mid-level nations around the world, like, let's say the Central American countries, call it like Colombia or Uruguay, where their national team is made up of guys that 99% of them play elsewhere. And that's the whole point. You've got to take your game to the highest level, and you might come back when you're in your older years or when you're developing years where you're playing in your home country. Otherwise, you're overseas playing with the best and you're earning a living. The other key thing for us in that scenario is that it is what will get some of these guys that have the option of league or union to go to union because of the huge money they can earn, including at that second tier, as you're saying. It's like that's going to bring more rugby players. We need Western Sydney, Polynesian Australians to go, no, rugby's the answer. I'm going to earn more money sooner and I'll have more longevity. And rugby has shown that it cares a bit more about my neck and my head than rugby league. So I can play for 15 years possibly, earning good coin overseas, and I can play for my country. So I think it's a big win that we've made this decision. You see the Springboks benefiting from they're in the right time zone to do it. So we can never be like that, but we can really live off this Japanese market, in particular that they do have these thriving 2 tiers of pro rugby with promotion and relegation in our time zone. And we should start promoting the Japanese rugby games here, because there's so many Aussies in it who can start to build their profile and become a more meaningful Australian sportsman and earn some endorsements and things. It's a global world. We're at the bottom of the planet. There's 25 million of us. We're fighting so hard to just stay relevant amongst football and AFL and everything else, that this is great for rugby, and we're the ones that are following a global game here. And yeah, I think it's going to help us in the long run. It might hurt in a few ways, and as I said, it might not mean as much as we think it will if we don't get on top of trying to lobby global rugby for a international window where these guys can be made available and not ruin their contract for how they earn $1.
Mate, very well said. Mate, Lewis, you've been an absolute all-star. Thank you so much, mate. Hopefully we'll talk to you again in the future. I hope you had fun, mate.
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks for a great chat, gentlemen. And Josh, I hope this is off, mate. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And let's keep pushing the rugby agenda. We've got a battle on our hands. I'm doing it with my mates, but things like this are going to help raise the profile, so keep it up. That's
the way, mate. We'll see you around the Discord. We'll chat to you. Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, gents. All the best.
See you, mate.
Boys, we'll piggyback off of what Lewis was saying. And Sam, I might throw it to you just because I think you're the last one we haven't heard from on this topic. And it's just one of those things where here we are moving forward. You guys are winning me over to the argument. Is this the right call by Rugby Australia?
Absolutely. And I think that, not only are we in a really competitive market here, but we actually have a code in league that is really kind of quite aggressively trying to muscle us out, I think. I have done some work in league and a number of the heavy hitters over there, and they don't, they are aware, they'll never admit it, but they are aware that they are a game that is not global. They'll say, oh yeah, we go to England and we play, against Papua New Guinea, and
they know the real deal. Yeah.
They know it. And so they know that if the game is going to survive their game, it has to dominate in Australia, and it has to dominate in Queensland, New South Wales, because, that's really where its strongest kind of market is, right? And so if we don't, and I do agree with what Lou was saying about the Japanese league, if we don't give these young guys options to go and ply their trade, we just can't compete, to be honest with you. You go to a Waratahs game or a Reds game or just a regular season game, and, it's like an echo chamber. It's like, there's no one there. There's no money being made. There's no, it's sort of very kind of sterile and boring.
So what do you say to play devil's advocate, and both of you feel free to chime in on this one. If someone were here who were quite passionate about the other side of the argument and said, you guys are crazy. What are you talking about? You're advocating for the death of rugby in Australia. You're murdering it here domestically and sending everyone overseas. How could you do this?
Because there is a competition that exists in Queensland and New South Wales that has a huge amount of passion and tribalism, and that is the Shoot Shield and the Hospital Cup. You go to a Manly versus Warringah game here in Sydney, they are, they're champing at the bit. They're desperate to sort of beat each other. There's that real tribalism, that real kind of history, with the fact that kind of Warringah, sort of was formed as a club of ex-Manly players who couldn't, it's really got a very strong kind of following. I think that's rugby in Australia. That's, that tribalism. I'm from Queensland originally. You look at some of the teams up there. Brothers and Norths, and that's your pipeline. That's your tribalism. And then you've got opportunities for them to go and apply their trade overseas and come back and play. Winning puts bums on seats.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Winning puts bums on seats. I mean, you look at the Queensland Reds a few years ago when they went to the grand final at Super Rugby, the stadium was packed. I know people in Queensland who were like, never been to a Reds game, but I went to that one.
My brother-in-law's a rugby league man. He watched that game and he goes, that was the best rugby union game I've ever seen, and there are only 2 tries. I said, see, mate, that's what I'm talking about. Like I mean, we always say that a good game of league is probably better to watch than a good game of union, but a great game of union is heads and shoulders above a great game of rugby league. That's what I've always felt. He watched the Lions match on the weekend, and he said it's unbelievable. There's 90,000 people, and I think one of the big issues is that they're actively looking to just take all our talent, but we're not providing a way forward. It sticks in my craw, the whole Angus Crichton situation. Finished in grade 12, played for Australian schoolboys, absolute union guy, played a little bit of league, being approached by the Sydney Roosters, and he was told at the Waratahs that he will join the wider training squad, and when he's 21, 22, he might make the Waratahs first team. A year later, he's playing for New South Wales, the state of origin.
Oh.
And that you look at that and you go, who the fuck said that to him, and why haven't they been strung up? And that's one of the things about rugby union is that it's very cliquey. It does have a very private school approach, and as much as we like to, say, it's growing, the game's growing elsewhere, which it is, and all the numbers show it's growing in regional areas and areas that aren't the traditional pathways. We still have that though. It's who you know in the rep teams. Do you know the coach? Does the coach know you? Doesn't matter how good you are. If you're from Townsville and you're a shit-hot rugby union player, you're not going to make a bloody rep team in Queensland.
No.
Unless you are scoring 5 tries a game. It's just unfortunate. You have to move to Brisbane. If you're a schoolboy in anywhere outside of a capital city, there is no chance in hell that you will get, a very, very slim chance that you will get a professional rugby union contract. And that's just
absolutely. And I think the other part of it as well, because I went to, I went to kind of Nudgee College in Brisbane, which was a big union school. And one of the things with the GPS schools is, they want to win, so they don't give a monkeys if they bring someone in, and a kid in who's a leaguey and absolutely, just wants to play league,
If you look at the Courier Mail right now and they have the GPS team of the week, I did this a week ago. I had one screen open with the team of the week and then another with the Google search, and I typed in every person's name in rugby league after it, and guess what pops up? They're all rugby league players as well. They play junior rugby league for a local club on a Sunday, or they've made a rep team in rugby league, all except for probably the tight 5.
Yes.
And that's smart. If my son, is better than what he was, and he was going to make a career of being a sportsman and playing rugby, I probably would say you might want to hedge your bets, mate.
Yeah.
And it's, you maybe play a bit of league, see how you go. Both my boys have played league. They hated it. They watch league. They don't watch union. They watch league, but they love playing rugby union. And I would say to these kids, hedge your bets, because if you don't get in one, you can push for another. Things change. You never know what happens.
Boys, let me jump in, and thanks so much for going down that tangent with me. And I'll just say to anyone listening at home, look, you'll hear me say this at the end of the podcast as well. Anyone is welcome to join these conversations every episode that I do. It's come one, come all. But if for some reason there are guys out there listening who are actually of the opposite end of the argument on the Giteau Law and feels that that side of the argument hasn't had enough time to breathe on this particular episode, then please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion in the future and let the other side do their thing. But guys, thanks so much for going down that tangent with me. I'll rip us back down to where we were just with the forward pack in South Africa, and we don't have much longer to go, so don't worry, I'm not going to keep you here all day. I just wanted to ask you two final things, one about the game in South Africa, then one last thing about Rugby Australia. Look, the news that the injury woes for the Wallabies do kind of continue. It is, I mentioned that during the Lions, it was unfortunate. Losing Rob Valentini for a couple of those Lions games was pretty devastating, obviously, to the team. But it goes beyond him, and now we're kind of doing the thing where it's been this way for Australian rugby for a little bit. The musical chairs at hooker, we've got Fezler, Pollard, Brandon Paenga-Amosa's being brought in. Parecki's just retired. What's your take on the hooker position right now? And every time my wife asks me, who do you want playing hooker? I legitimately look at her and go, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I want a hooker who can throw it straight in the line out and do the dirty work. That's all I want. That's all I want, right? It's the one job of a hooker.
Can I just say that's everyone's got their one weird thing with rugby. My weird fixation is line out throwing, because I was a basketball player. I was basketball and rugby at school, and if I do say so myself, threw a mean fucking line out. So I'm really critical of line out throwing.
Well, if you want to hear me swear, my wife will know that something happened in the first test, and she went to the bathroom and she heard me yell out, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And she goes, "Let me guess, the line out failed." And I said, "Yeah, the ball went." Yeah, it's a simple thing you do, and if you do it right, you're guaranteed 100% of the time to have possession of the ball. It's a restart, and you get the ball if you do it perfectly every time. So I'm just seething whenever I see that happen.
So here's a question, because I'm a bit on the fence when it comes to what makes a great hooker, because I've never played hooker. Like I've never been in the front row. It's the dark arts that I'm so glad that I never had to go down that line when I played rugby.
Your neck thanks you.
Is it do you want more of a kind of Sean Fitzpatrick kind of bit of mongrel, bit of just that old school tough guy, or do you want a smaller, more dynamic? Not that Sean Fitzpatrick was enormous, but a bit more dynamic in a hooker where that's almost like a number 7 or a loose forward that can be really mobile.
Hear me out, Carlo Tizzano.
I was just going to say it. In my dream world, a bloke like Carlo Tizzano can play too.
He's not built like a flanker. Look at him. He's like a fucking bar fridge. He really is. He's 6 foot and 4 foot wide, and he can't be moved when he's on the ball. I want an Australian Kevin Mialamu, and I think Carlo Tizzano can be that guy.
I'm not saying convert him, but in my dream world that probably will never exist, you're spot on. He's got the body type, the game, the defense that I would love to see a bloke like him at 2.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that he was on the bench, because, McWright, I think, was marked out of the Lions series. I think the Lions did a really good job of sending traffic his way. The old Pocock, it's the way New Zealand dealt with Pocock, was to send runners his way. So he has to make a first-up tackle, and he can't get up and pilfer the ball. And I think he was pushed out of the game. But McWright offers something a bit different from Carlo, and that is a bit more athleticism and dynamism around the field. I think that's probably one of the reasons why he was on the bench. He was brought in as a guy to get the clutch turnover 8 minutes to go when you're 5 meters out from your own line. And he did that. And he nearly did that in the second test. I'm still a bit upset about that call. Before the Lions series, I was talking to one of my mates, and I said, we're going to lose 2-1, and one of the test matches is going to be decided by a really, really critical call, and it's going to cause the internet to explode. And I hope it's not us. And it was.
Yeah.
So where are we settling on this one, boys? Of the BPA, Pollard, Fezler options.
Yeah.
Do you do the shoulder shrug like me, which I shouldn't do as a Wallaby fan? But what do you reckon?
Look,
I'm a bit of a shoulder shrug on it, because I think any one of those. There's nobody that comes to mind when I go, oh mate, if we lose that guy, we are. Well, that's the thing.
Shit. Are they all based? This is such a horrible thing to say, but are they all basically the same player?
Yes, they are. That's it. Look, if you're losing a test match, if you're losing a test match because your hooker's injured, you've got some real problems. That's all I'm saying on that. And I'm a yappy scrum half. I've seen a lot of hookers and do their stuff, and I think there's not much difference between probably BPA. BP, he's probably a bit different. He's a bigger boy. but Pollard and Matty Fessler are very similar builds. They do a good job, and that's all I wanted from a hooker is a hooker to do a good job.
Yeah,
they're not out. I don't need them running 50 meters to score a try or doing a clutch tackle 5 meters out from their line. They've just got to get their head in the dark spaces.
The only thing I'll add is just like I kind of do wish Fessler would get healthy for a prolonged period of time, because I personally think he's got the best line out throw. I don't think Pollard's quite there in that field. So like that's just a mild preference of mine, but there you go. Look, boys, we'll start to wrap up there just in terms of I've got one last point I want to get to real quick, but look, obviously hoping the Wallabies, just like we said, don't fall victim to the inconsistency bug. Go out and just hit the Springboks as hard as they hit the Lions in those last couple of games. It's very difficult being over in South Africa and getting results, obviously. And, we just wish the boys the best going forward. And I can't wait I'm really excited to watch these ones on telly and cheer the boys on. Any final thoughts on the Springboks game before we get to the last point, guys?
Look, I think for me, I'm a bit like what we've been talking about all day. I just want them to really put in a good showing. If they go down to the Springboks, the Springboks are the world champions. That they've really got a great side, great depth. Even their schoolboys rugby is phenomenal. Like Super Rugby crowds would, Super teams would love to get those sorts of crowds at their games for the schoolboys games over there. I just don't want them to get blown off the park, and and get to that kind of unfortunate situation we found ourselves in sometimes, where you've got the coach coming in and the hand wringing and look, we're building, and and that's we're disappointed, and it's we're still in a building phase. I mean, we've been in a building phase for 20 fucking years. Like we've built players that have gone. You know what I mean? Like they're rusted. We built these players, and I just want them to go out. And a bit like what happened with the Lions, where it's a bit content, even if we lose it and they go, shit, that was closer than we thought it was going to be. I just don't want us to panic either. If we don't get a great result straight off the bat, if we don't beat the Boks in South Africa, which is not an easy thing, I don't want us to go into this wholesale, that's it. We knew we were fucked. All right, so let's move Joseph to hooker. We'll take Taniela Tupou and put him at foot. That knee-jerk kind of reaction. Yeah. Which I don't think Joe would do, but I just that to me
maybe
maybe
Tupou can play 12. Maybe that's our solution at that position.
Right, if we can keep him fit for longer than 20 minutes, we might give him a crack.
I'll be ecstatic if we get one win in South Africa. That will be the biggest win of the year, to be honest. And I agree. And I think, as I said earlier, if we capitulate, we're back at square one. We're back at
100%.
We're not at the horrible days of Eddie Jones. I didn't want to mention that troll's name. But, we're back to square one, because Joe's going to be leaving at the end of the year. Les is coming in, and he's going to have to start all over again. So if we can build, come second or third in the Rugby Championship, it was a big win for me.
Mm. Yeah. When you say Eddie Jones, you mean my new podcast rival?
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Look, I'm not an angry man, Josh, but I would cross the street to have some strong words with that guy.
Oh, there you go. All right.
I would follow him down and do some chess.
Oh, look out, Eddie. Andy's coming for you. All right, guys, look, the last thing I wanted to bring up, just real quick to round out what has been a really, really fun conversation, is just some interesting news. It's off the field news, but it's great news, and it's something, again, that is only of benefit to the future of rugby in Australia. Phil Waugh's come out and said that after the British and Irish Lions tour, that, it went better than expected from a financials perspective, and we are now flush with cash, which is great. Rugby Australia, before reported apparently, this is according to the Sydney Morning Herald, a $36.8 million loss for the financial year recently. But given that the tours just happened, Phil Waugh is hoping that what we've just gone through will wipe off about $60 million worth of debt by the end of this year. And then he wants to pump that money back into grassroots footy, which is obviously something that fans have been calling on for a very long time, where we've rounded the corner from the dark days of some really poor administration over the last 10, 20 years. And Phil Waugh is a recent appointee to run Rugby Australia. People, of my age definitely no Phil Waugh have high hopes that he has the nous and the sort of attitude to and the wherewithal to take Rugby Australia where it needs to go. And you start at the grassroots, don't you guys?
Absolutely. What I would hate to see is another recruitment drive into league. You know what I mean? Where we just go in and we get there's some phenomenal athletes playing rugby league. Don't get me wrong. We'd be lucky to have a lot of them, but it sort of reinforces a lot of kind of chatter out there. And it's just they'll come back. It's just a grab for cash. They've just gone over to get a bit of money and they'll come back. I'd love to see it invested in grassroots rugby, really, but things like, that the junior development squads and stuff like that. I mean, I live in northwest Sydney, and, AFL has such a massive stronghold out here, that and league, but AFL, because it is so inclusive, they throw money at the juniors, and they really focus on getting the local GWS Giants to come and meet with the players.
All the kids, guys, girls, families, get down here, have a kick.
It is so it is, they really pour money into it. And I would love to see Union do something similar, that we move it away from the kind of the private school domains, or move it away from that idea of, unless your heritage is, from one of the Polynesian islands, you don't stand a chance. That we can develop the game for these, for kids and really make an effort to bring them into the fold, even if they don't go on to play professionally, but they just stay fans of the game would be great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, both my boys play the game, and when my son, my 17-year-old, when he was 7, started playing at Sunnybank, which is about a 7-minute walk from my house. His first year of playing there, he got a backpack with a football and a hat and stickers and free tickets to games, and it was like, I can't believe this is amazing. And that just dropped off. And I understand there's a cost associated with it. You get nothing now. You get a pair of socks for free, and you have to buy everything else, and that's okay. I'm willing to support junior rugby, but it's driving that engagement with a generation of kids that need entertainment and everything in front of them right now. Rugby league is great for that. It's all big noise, loud noise. If you drill down into the game, it's just the same stuff every single tackle, right? So, but it's like there's noise going on, there's fireworks, there's all the aggro about it, there's all the off-field dramas, and everyone gets stuck into it. I do want to see more engagement from say the QAU, New South Wales Rugby Union, and all the others. I'd like to see Victoria really cleaned out. As somebody, I played rugby in Victoria many, many years ago. It was a schmozzle back then. It's a schmozzle now. The Rebels should never have been able to get to the position where they had to fold. There would have been warning signs on that. And I don't profess to know everything about it. But look, as I touched, Queensland's a big state. There's a huge population in southeast Queensland. But you can't tell me that there aren't any good players north of bloody Noosa.
Yeah,
because the NRL, the ARL, the QRL, they don't just have 1 or 2 development officers in that part of the world. They have an army of development officers in Cairns and Townsville, Mount Isa, Charters Towers, all those little towns. And all those little towns have a thriving little union community. Now, I went to a rep carnival a couple of years ago. I was talking to people from Peninsula, basically up in Cairns and Townsville. They don't start the rugby union season until the rugby league season has finished, because if they don't do that, they have no players.
Right.
So they play like September to November in their junior rugby union comp, because if they run it, they'll have 4 kids down there because all the other kids are playing rugby league up there. So, and there's a gigantic population. It's just as big as someone focusing on Newcastle or Wollongong. So I don't know. I agree with you guys there. I don't want to see money thrown at rugby league wingers. I don't want to see rugby league players. Let's retain the boys and girls coming through our systems when they're 15, 16, 17 and keep them in this game. We're going to lose some to rugby league, but that's just the nature of the beast. But we need to have a viable opportunity for kids to earn a living.
Well, the other thing I'd love to see as well is, and this is something that the rugby league is doing quite well, is really kind of investing to create some financial surety. You know what I mean? So they're, like you sort of Vlandis and others, they're buying up hotels, they're taking money and buying up assets.
So are you saying rugby union and are you saying Phil Walsh should start buying NVIDIA?
Yeah, get into it, get amongst it. You know what I mean? Like, or take it down the pokies and see if he can double it.
Yeah, put it all on black.
Yeah, on the old Bricky's laptop, the old Pelican Pete. But, to create a level of financial, I guess, surety, I don't know if that's the right word, but, where we don't sort of have this kind of, 1 year we've got a bucket load of cash and then all of a sudden it's all over. Trimming it down and thinking, okay, well, we don't have we've got a bit of money in the kitty now, but we don't have untold billions, and we don't have a Lions series every year. I wish we did, but we don't. So maybe looking at it and being really prudent and saying, well, look, let's get some actual let's get some actual kind of assets, some income producing things, and let's tap into the fans as well. And, I used to be a member of the Wallaby First, right? And that was, I'd pay my money every year. I'd buy my tickets. I stopped doing it because it became the value was just not there anymore. You pay $1,000 a year to be a member, but you got nothing out of it. I went to a game and, they were just letting any randos just come in and sit there. Not that I care about that, but it's like, well, what am I paying for? If we're sitting in the same place, why am I paying a membership fee? What do I get for it? Well, nothing really. I just kind of may as well just buy the tickets.
Rugby Australia's got an opportunity when the World Cup comes around to really grab the attention by the scruff of the neck. I mean, 100%. I remember in 2003, I went to 3 games for $15 tickets. And I went to Suncorp Stadium, I got slaughtered at the Caxton, and then went and sat with a whole bunch of Fijians and watched them get trounced by 50 by France. And one of the best games of rugby I've ever been to. And Rapini scored right in front of us. It was great. And that got everyone talking, everyone talking about the game. You had people that had never been anything like that going to see Tonga play someone at Suncorp Stadium with 50,000 people. It's insane. So if they squander this, if we're having a chat in 4 years' time, that we've got no money and the 6 leagueies that we signed are all broken or they're not good enough or they've left, I'm really going to be upset.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, God, the 2003 World Cup, I worked it as a young interning reporter helping with the wire service, doing post-match reports and things like that. And I think at one point they sent me out to cover the England training and I got to chat with Martin Johnson and do the world's shortest interview with him, and he was actually lovely. And, more than likely didn't mean it, but told me I was a great young reporter and it fucking meant the world to me at the time and lifted my spirits. So fond memories of the World Cup. Thank you, Martin Johnson, for that one.
I lived in Brisbane in 2003 as well when the World Cup was on. And I remember, I worked in an office and we all supported the Wallabies, but then the other thing we did was we took on another team. Right, so we took on Uruguay in the office. You said, right, so we went to all the Uruguay games. We'd have 400 beers and then we'd go up to the Suncorp Stadium and watch Uruguay or whatever. And something like that where you really build that momentum. Where it's not, it's just the fun aspect of it as well. It's the joy of just going out and seeing these guys and just kind of having fun and enjoying themselves and being part of the crowd. I think it's a huge opportunity. I agree with you.
They had games in Tasmania that were sold out.
Yeah.
Tasmania, between Uruguay and someone else in Tasmania. What the hell?
And he's hoping the 27 World Cup is obviously all that and more. Guys, weird quick one just to wind up on that might be too hard to answer. I don't know, because what do you base it on? Faith in Phil Waugh moving forward, new man at the job?
Yep, love it.
Cool. I'm happy for it. Yep.
Good stuff. Yeah, I hope he goes well.
I think he really, as an ex-player, and just even looking at his playing style, when he did play, he's dogged, he's determined, but he genuinely loves the game. He loves the game. You can see that, and you can get a whole bunch of qualifications and skills and knowledge. But when you really love the game that you're administering, like you love it, which I think he does, you're always going to put in that extra effort. It's really close to your heart, and I think it's very close to his heart, which I think is good for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Wishing him all the best in the role going forward. I'd do my second name drop like a wanker of the episode, and he was the bloke who actually presented me with my first 15 jersey at the end of season thing, and he was a really nice guy. So really wishing Phil Waugh all the best, and hope that he grows in the role and obviously uses all this cash that we're now flush with to the greatest extent. But guys, look, we'll wrap it up there. I cannot thank you enough for going out on a limb for some random bloke who's just reached out to you and said, hey guys, I want to start a rugby podcast. Would you be interested in being the first round of callers? You guys did it. You dove in the deep end of the pool. I would like to think that you've had a good time. I've had a fantastic time. Andy, Sam, Andy, I'll start with you, mate. Thank you so much again.
Appreciate it, mate. It's always good to talk about the game I love.
That's the way. Sam, mate, thank you so much. You're a legend.
Mate, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for for putting it out there. I think it's a great initiative, and I had a great time.
Appreciate it. Well, we'll have to try and talk to you boys at some point in the future. To all of you listening at home, guys, follow the YouTube account at Loosehead Pod. Follow the Instagram account at Loosehead Pod. I'll post this on the Reddit. You can be on this show, guys. I want to talk to all of you. This is a community-based show. Guys like Andy, Sam, Lewis, I want to hear from a zillion of you about Australia rugby moving forward. Get amongst it, and I hope to see you in the future. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to all of that. I'm going to go through the news now in this segment and just let you know some of the items that have popped up that are obviously of note to the Wallabies moving forward. So the squad's been named to go to South Africa, as we just discussed just then. And the unfortunate thing is it's noteworthy for the injuries that have popped up. And that injury cloud is just hanging over the Wallabies. And we've got, unfortunately, Alan Alaalatoa still on the mend and really out for quite a while, about 4 to 6 weeks, unfortunately. So we're going to miss him for the bulk of the Rugby Championship, which sucks. But hopefully he gets back to us as soon as possible. Also, apparently, Taniela Tupou might still have a bad toe from that last game against the Lions. So the front row looking a little bit shaky. We shall see what happens, obviously, with the next man up and just see what Joe Schmidt can put together there for us. We've also got Matt Fesler hurt, another front rower, Jake Gordon and Tom Liner, and Harry Potter. Tom Liner obviously still suffering from that hit that he took from Dan Sheehan in the last game against the Lions. More on that later in relation to what happened to Dan Sheehan. But I also figured that I would discuss some of the signings that have come up in Super Rugby. I know the next Super Rugby season is obviously some time away, but no time like the present. It's all happened this week, sort of the off-season signings. And I'll just go through not all of them, but just some of the ones that stood out to me. Quite interesting for the New South Wales Waratahs. They had a mammoth off-season as far as I can see in terms of signings. Angus Blythe goes from the Reds to the Waratahs. Harry Potter has moved from the Force to the Waratahs. And we've also got Teddy Wilson re-signing, Jake Gordon re-signing, Pete Samu coming back to Australia to play with the New South Wales Waratahs. So great pickup for them as he comes back from France. My wife seems to think they're a dark horse for next year now. We'll see. We'll talk about that later when we start previewing Super Rugby later down the track. They also lost Tane Edmed, and I guess I might as well talk about the Brumbies now because that's where he went. Tane Edmed shifting over down to Canberra. I think that's a really, really interesting pickup for them. And quite frankly, I know Tane Edmed has been somewhat inconsistent, but also, a little bit of a victim of inconsistency at New South Wales, if you will. I actually think he's going to go all right in Canberra, and he's a little bit of a dark horse of mine for a big improver next season. So we'll keep an eye out on Tane Edmed, who's also been brought into the Wallaby squad for a bit of injury cover for the tour to South Africa. Tom Wright re-signed with the Brumbies. Billy Pollard re-signed. James Slipper coming back for one more year. Corey Toole re-signed. So some good news there for the Brumbies. As far as Queensland goes, a boatload of re-signings on this one. No massive moves, but we signed Aiden Ross from the Chiefs, which actually is a massive move. That's great for our front row. But outside of that, no other major additions that I can see. Just a lot of bringing people back. So the band's getting back together again. Jock Campbell, Tate McDermott, Sarah Uru, Kalani Thomas, Richie Asiata. I'm a weird Richie Asiata stan. I really like him. I thought he did really well for the Reds last year, given our injury issues and what happened when, it seems like every hooker in Australia is going down with an injury. But I thought Asiata was fantastic for Queensland last season. Josh Fluke re-signed as well. I love Josh Fluke. Hopefully he can shake off his injuries of last season as well. So that's all good stuff for the Reds. Now for the Force. We've got a re-signing of Tom Robertson. That's fantastic. Former All Blacks winger George Bridge is coming back to Super Rugby to play for the Force. So that's an interesting one there. And we've also got an Argentinian international coming to play for the Force on a 2-year contract, Franco Molina. So that's a really, really interesting one. I think it'll be fun to watch how that plays out for the Force next year. But yeah, that's pretty much everything happening in the way of Super Rugby. And all of that happened, like I said, a bit of a whirlwind tour of signings over the last week or so. So good to catch up on that. Dave Parecki is retiring. We obviously just saw him play against the Lions, and he's decided to call it quits on his career. So best of luck to Dave Parecki. Thank you for the memories and the play, obviously. He's 32. He retires with 21 caps under his on his belt there. And he didn't actually really become a fixture in Australian rugby until around about the 2021 super season, and then made his Wallabies debut a year after that. So hasn't been on the scene that long, Dave Parecki, but obviously filled in and played really well at hooker in the time that he had. So thanks for your contribution to Australian rugby, and we wish you well for the future. Interesting little bit of news that popped up it happened after or while we were recording the conversation that you just heard. It's funny that Sterling Mortlock is here in a chat with The Raw, I believe, saying that he believes Joseph-Aukuso Sua'ali'i should play on the wing. So there you go. As far as I'm concerned, you know what? I'm claiming it. This podcast is claiming it. We said it first, and Sterling somehow heard it and repeated it, which is obviously bullshit, but I'm going with that. Yeah, it's, stop stealing our ideas, Sterling Mortlock, you bloody Kings boys. No, that's it's fun to see a Wallaby legend obviously making a similar point that you heard here on the podcast, and it seems to be a relatively common theory now that maybe that's what Joe Schmidt should really strongly consider doing with Joseph-Aukuso Sua'ali'i moving forward. We shall see. But outside of that, guys, look, the last thing I kind of wanted to discuss, just as far as the news goes, is I mentioned in the podcast that we just recorded that I didn't really want to talk about, at least in that portion of the podcast, I didn't really want to talk about the negative side of the Lion series that's just been. And there's, there really is, I'm not joking, a 3-hour conversation in and of itself, all about what happened, with the Lions, the refereeing, the TMO, all of that stuff. Don't tempt me with a good time. I joke not. I could do 2 hours alone just talking with people about the Jack Morgan clean out. But moving on from that, the Dan Sheehan hit in Game 3 on Tom Liner that sort of made a lot of people groan when they saw the replay, myself included, has resulted in a ban for Dan Sheehan for 4 matches. Now, that's not 4 international matches, that's just 4 matches. So as many of you have pointed out on the subreddit, the unfortunate side of that is, rugby's not the only sport that does this, weirdly. They're 4 matches that are relatively inconsequential to Dan Sheehan. Like, he's just going to miss 4 club games that he probably wouldn't have played in anyway, but they count towards the tally of banned games, and that's it. Bob's your uncle. He's pretty much good to go. It's a weird aftertaste from the Lion series, and particularly for Australians who felt so hard done by the referees and the TMO through that series. What happened with that hit? I haven't met anyone yet who has said that that hit was fine. Obviously, you met a lot of people, funnily enough, all from the Northern Hemisphere, who said Jack Morgan's clean out was fine. I disagree. But I don't think I've met anyone who said that this hit by Sheehan was fine. It's a really obvious elbow to the head, bit of shoulder in there as well. It was pretty, wasn't a great hit. Liner goes for an HIA straight away afterwards, and the TMO is just blindfolded through the whole thing. And then just to rub salt in the wound, you get Jonker, the TMO, checking bizarre things like that Nick White incident where literally nothing happened, like nothing beyond nothing happened. And Jonker's like, I just want to go back and check something. And all the referees are like, what the fuck? Very odd. And that he missed this hit on Liner but tried to pick up this other stuff that didn't exist. This has sort of been talked about ad nauseum already in the time since. But it is just a bit of salt in the wound to see. Look, it's the right decision. I'm not going to sit here and bitch about it, but it's just weird to see him get banned after the fact, but nothing happen in the moment. It's super weird and just adds fuel to the fire for Australian fans to, like I said, feel very hard done by. I don't believe that there is some. I'm not a subscriber to the mass conspiracy theory that everyone was in on it for the refs to come together and be very, very positive towards the Lions throughout the series. I don't go that far. But I'm also very aware that the refs were very positive towards the Lions in the series, just because they were. It was really unfortunate. I just think Australia got the short end of the stick in more ways than one. It wasn't just those two incidents. It was, no referee wanting to pull them up at all for just living offside. And Maro Itoje just doing the world's greatest, if not worse, Richie McCaw impression of just slowing down every breakdown to the point that it was like, are you serious? How is this allowed? He just gets to hold the ball the whole time until the last second and then let go. And it's like, no, he's okay. It was infuriating. But anyway, that's that. Sheehan got a ban. Cop that, I guess. It was a bit of a dog hit. And now we get to deal with missing our fly half for the series in South Africa, maybe, because he's still understandably wearing the head injury. So thanks, Dan Sheehan. Anyway, that's the news, guys. Just wanted to add that all in. And hopefully we'll have more to talk about in the next episode news-wise. So thanks for that. So that's episode 1 in the books, guys. We made it. We did it. The maiden voyage. Thank you so much for listening to all of that. And I really, really hope you enjoyed it. What you can do for me going forward, if you liked this and would like more of it, is get engaged with the show. Please throw a like on this YouTube video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment talking about something that you heard on the show that you'd like to chime in on. That helps incredibly with getting this show moving and started. It will help the algorithm and help push us out to a wider audience to the point that we can grow this show and you can say you were there from day one. So please do get involved that way. But there's more that you can do. You saw this was a community-based show and you're like, how did Josh get a hold of these guys to talk about it? It's episode 1. They talked about all these things. You didn't know those guys. There's a great way that you can get involved too, and that's through the show's Discord. Now, don't freak out if you're not, aware of Discord or you don't know how to use it. It's super easy. Look, this is the show's Discord. We're all set up. We're ready to go. Obviously, there's not many people in there now, just the callers from today, because I haven't advertised it yet. I haven't thrown this out on the subreddit and told people about it. Haven't given them the link. But I'm going to right now after I publish this, and I guarantee you people will start to slowly filter into this community, and we've got all these channels to set up to discuss all things Rugby Australia, Wallabies, Super Rugby, your favourite, player. Get in there and discuss it with what is going to become a growing, fun, really engaged community. So guys, get in on the ground level, trust me. And I will say that up above me here, this is what you search for on YouTube and on Instagram. Look for Loosehead Pod and we'll get posts coming out really, really soon. You can follow along and have fun with all that stuff as well as the show grows. Down in the corner here, Yes, we are on Spotify as well. Please just type in Loosehead Pod on Spotify and you will find the show. So you can either watch it on YouTube or you can listen along when you go for a jog with the dog on Spotify. You can do it all, guys. It's not my first rodeo. I've been podcasting for years. Please do come along on this journey with me. And I'll just let you know one thing or two things that listeners of my other content have said to me over the years. First and foremost, so many people have said to me, I wish I found the show earlier. They would go back through the archives and listen to dozens of hours of old content to catch up. Doesn't matter there was old news. They just enjoyed the show that much. They wanted to catch up and listen to some of the old conversations with guests and see what kind of back and forths we would have. You are here at the ground level, so you're in good stead here with this show. But tell your mates about it. Tap your friends on the shoulder. Please share it with them. Send it on to them and let them know, hey, this guy's going to be doing this show about the Wallabies every week or so. You know, to stop yourself from having to listen to a backlog of episodes, get on it now. You're here. You've done it. That's fantastic. The second thing I was going to say is if you're interested in being a caller, just put your hand up. Guys, I'll talk to anyone. And it's one of those things that all my callers, I would like to think, have fun with the show. And you heard it today where I've no doubt all of those callers were very wary of jumping in with a guy they don't know, some randoms like, hey guys, I'm starting a rugby podcast. Will you talk to me? I would like to think they had more fun than they were expecting. And I think you could hear it in their voices. Those guys really got into that chat. I really got into that chat. I loved it. And it's only going to get better and better moving forward. If you want to be involved, if you think this sounds fun, get in the Discord, ping me, say, Josh, I want to be on the next episode of the show, and we'll make it happen. This is all for the community. This is for anyone. This is podcasting brought to you. You don't have to do too much. I'll do all the heavy lifting. Just have a chat with me. It's all fun, guys, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.